Hello. This will review what we've learned about CSS selectors. So the 5 basic selectors, there's a lot more. The tag, class, and pseudo selectors are by far the most common because they're generally general expressions. So tag on the element itself, that type of element. A class, which can be used on multiple elements and repeated anywhere, and all elements support the class attribute. And then pseudo selectors, which are based on the current state of the HTML. Now, there's a whole family of pseudo selectors, by the way, that we haven't looked at that have to do with the positioning of the element on the page and not necessarily user interface actions. But for the most part, pseudo selectors are based on user interface actions when you want to light up a button, change the text when the user comes near it in order to advertise the possibility that the button can be pressed. ID is specific for CSS. It's used sometimes. The ID attribute. Again, CSS should be a general expression of your site's style, and ID can only appear on one element in the page, so it's very specific. Most of the time, it's used to call out JavaScript. Now, JavaScript is the third piece that we're going to study later on about front-end development, and that's the programming language of the browser. And that allows the browser to become interactive and intelligent, to be able to do things that only a programming language can do. HTML and CSS are not full-up programming languages. They appear to be very similar to them, and they are related to them, but they're not full-up programming languages. When you want to call out an attribute to act on it versus JavaScript, the ID becomes very valuable because the ID can call out a specific thing that the JavaScript is targeting. So we'll see more IDs used for JavaScript than you will for CSS. So selectors based on attributes are also very specific, and I don't think I've ever seen a page designed that used selectors in the CSS, but it could be useful, and it depends on what your purpose is. So fonts and design notes. Remember, sans serif fonts are for display headings. That is fonts without little feet. The font that you see here in this PowerPoint slide is a sans serif font. Serif fonts, typically for body text. And now that you know that, you'll see that that's just what looks right, because that's what designers are taught, and it's virtually everywhere. On websites, you'll see headings, sans serif fonts. Not just websites, but your textbooks, non-textbooks, books that has the table of contents will be sans serif font, but the body text will be serifed. That product labels on a can of tuna fish normally be a sans serif font. Billboard sans serif font. So you'll see this everywhere, because that's what designers are taught in terms of how you use fonts. CSS comments are only block style comments, begin /* and star then // and then property inheritance. Property inheritance depends on the nature of the property. There's no overall principle that will guide you here. It's just what makes sense for that particular property. In the case of font family, for example, it makes sense that you want consistent font throughout, so the parent element calls out the font, and then all the inherited children inherit that font. If you have a property such as a border style, however, you don't want boxes everywhere there, and so that property is not inherited. Both of these inheritance or non-inheritance can be overridden in the CSS in order to specify something different. So that concludes our basic study of the 5 basic selectors.